Hello, everyone. This is Eric Dingman with IP Pathways and Adaptive Cloud. Today, we are going to take a look at your server hosting environment and private cloud. So let me share my screen and we'll take a look. All right, so you should be looking at our login screen. And this is what your partner here will be seeing when they log in. And you can see we have a couple of options, and it is labeled here for CMIT solutions. So if you had a need here to change this at all, we can certainly do that and make that look and feel however it is that you would like. Totally customizable there. So we're going to go ahead and log in. And again, as you can see, we have a couple of options. We have options immediately. We've got local login, and then we have our SSO. That's our single sign-on and multi-factor authentication option, which we will look at a little bit later as far as how to turn that on and manage that. But selecting that option would give us the ability to not only set that up, but also log in. So at this point, I'm going to select the local login as admin, and then I'm going to log in here as such. And as you can see, as we log in here, we're immediately met with a few things to look at here. So this is an overview, basic overview of the entire environment, what's running for your not only your partner portal and your look here, but also all of your clients, your customers that you have built in underneath your environment. So everything that's running from, again, VMs, what that looks like, what's stopped, what's running, how many you have in the environment, your network, how many isolated networks you have running, or virtual private clouds, and how many public IP addresses also that are in use here. This is all a consumption-based environment, so it is nice to maybe see kind of at a quick glance here as to what exactly is running at this time. So everything really kind of starts at the account level, and this is where you, when you get provisioned an account, we provision your first login account here. In this case, it's called CMIT Demo. And it's given this domain admin role, which we'll talk through here a little bit as well, and then the role type, and then we give it a domain name. This is your root domain. This is what will always be showing as your domain as you select your different options here. It will always be under this root domain here, and then obviously what this looks like, and then the ability to update this, and then look at our users. So we can click this plus sign. We're going to click on view users. These are the users that are running underneath this account. So what this would look like for you and for your customers, these would be the additional administrators or technicians that you would want to give access to this environment to be able to manage and add resources. In this case, we build an initial admin who is granted a specific role. Here I have the ability to, for this admin, I can come in here immediately, I can change the password, and then I can also configure the SAML, which is the single sign-on and multi-factor authentication configuration. So this is where I can turn that on for that admin. So if I was to authorize this, I can come back out to the login and configure that. The identity provider, there's only one here, so you don't have multiple options. It's our identity that the provider that we've configured for you here. So the only option there. But this is where how you would turn that on and off for specific users. If we were to want to have a need to add additional technicians here, which is always a good thing to do, if I click on add user, a few things to take away here. The login for this, again, it just has to be kind of unique for this environment. If you're going to add a user in here as well, give it a password, email address. It would be your email. Best practice would for the username would be to use an email. You don't have to per se. If you're going to take advantage of the multi-factor single sign-on, that is what you're going to want to put in there, as that's what that is. That's the field that the single sign-on multi-factor is keyed off of when you log in. So then again, you're going to give it an email address, first and last name, time zone. Quick tip there: if you just type in like CS, it's gonna quickly take you to your central time zone. In this case, for us. So this is how you're going to add a user in here. And again, at the user level, I can authorize this single sign-on multi-factor by selecting this option. So we will look at that a little bit further as well. Again, some options that we have here: we can disable them. I can delete the user here as well. So this is where you're going to manage those additional users under your account. So when you have a new customer, new client, you're going to add them here. Again, this is what really starts the multi-tenancy, the isolation of your environment. So you really want to start here by adding an account. So again, the account name needs to be unique within this environment, but using an email address would be best practice there as well. In this case, I'm just going to say, let's do that. Admin test out local, give it a password. For the account and the first admin here, copy and paste the email address. And again, our domain is going to always remain our root domain. So that's the only option you have there. And this is where we're going to put in the client's name. So this is what will also show up on your invoice. So you want that to obviously reflect what you're going to be able to pick out, under your invoicing, and pick out of a lineup, if you will. Role here. These are some of the things I kind of talked about a little bit previously with that domain admin. So you have a couple of options here, obviously. So the resource admin really would only get used in special cases where you have dedicated hardware in the data center that we would utilize for this environment. So definitely a special use case for that. So generally not selected. The other option is domain admin. Again, this is going to be an option that when you're creating your customers, you pretty much will never utilize this. This would be if you were going to create an additional account that would be managing your entire virtual infrastructure, your entire virtual environment here. And that user role has the access to everything in the environment, including accounts and users. So what you're going to want to select here is the user role, and this is what is going to create that multi-tenancy, that isolation is where this is going to start in your environment. So you always, unless there's a specific use case in which you would, discuss with myself otherwise it's going to be selected user there. So again, time zone, we'll select that here. And then network domain. What you would enter here is if you had anything specifically that you wanted to show in the virtual machine as the DNS suffix. So if you had something specific here you wanted to place in there, I'm going to put something like, let's do test dot, and then I'm going to do my domain here. So you might do something like customer dot, and then yourdomain.com or customer.theirdomain. So the only thing is this is authoritative. So you do want that to make sense for the environment and to also not overlap what you already have in place. And then at the account level, you can also authorize the single sign-on multi-factor here as well. So you have an option there. So I'm going to go ahead and create my account. And then generally what I would do is go ahead and log in as that account to build that account's environment. As an administrator, you do have the ability to create the client's networking, but the instances themselves at this point, you want to create under that account so that you can actually apply it appropriately. But you do have the ability to manage those, especially once they're built. So we will show that here shortly. So what I'm going to do here, again, you can see I have my admin account and I've got my new user. So I'm actually going to go ahead and log out here and then log in as my test local. Log in. All right. So I am now in my customer's environment, and you can see I obviously have fewer options here to be able to manage this. And if I click on accounts, you see we don't see any other accounts other than myself. So very important there. And then also you can see here, I really don't have a whole lot of management that I have the ability to do. I can't add users here. The only thing I'd have the ability to do is basically go ahead and change the password for that user here. So an important piece there. Again, that's that isolation that you'll have in that multi-tenancy. You cannot traverse to other accounts this way. So from there, what we're going to look at is our networking. And this, again, is going to further show our multi-tenancy and our isolation. So what we do here is we're going to create our virtual private cloud. And again, this is an isolated network in which we're going to operate here for our clients. So we can click on add here, add VPC, and we're going to give it a name, something generally like customer space VPC. So maybe we do past customer PC. And the same thing for a description. Give it a zone. Zones are our data centers. We have 2 data centers, one in Des Moines, one in Omaha. So you're going to want to select one of those here. It does not matter which one you select. You just want to be consistent along the way here, and we'll show that as we move forward here a little bit. You want to make sure that everything is within the same zone. Supercider here, we're going to select our overarching network structure here. Basically, we're going to create some subnets under this, and you want them to all basically live under this this same larger sub here, or so larger network. So we're going to create this, and again, all of our guest networks just need to live underneath this. So it's going to create this entire environment for you. And you'll see that as we move forward, it's going to create a virtual router, which will basically have all of that information configured within it. So then DNS domain here, this again, we can further, just like we did before on the account, we can further specify the information that we want to show in that DNS suffix. I'm going to leave that blank here in this case, but I do have the ability to further specify something specifically there. VPC offering. So again, this virtual private cloud and what we're doing here with this VPC, it's going to create a virtual router as we're building this. And that virtual router will do DHCP along with pushing the DNS and IP addresses and all that. So it's doing that all for you. you do have the ability to turn that off here. So if you have a use case for that, say you're putting an Active Directory environment in here, a domain controller, you don't necessarily want that router doling out that information. No different than a physical environment here, but we have that ability to go ahead and configure this here to turn that off if we desired. In this case, I'm going to leave it on for demonstration purposes as we go along here. So I'm going to hit OK. And then again, I'm going to select this. It's going to take just a little bit of time here to build this. It's on the back end. It's creating the IP structure. It's going out to the public to grab from our block of IPs. It's grabbing a public IP address, which will become our source NAT, which I'll show you as it's created here. So once this is created, it is a publicly addressable a router. It's available straight away. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that. So this is built now. It's configured. So let's go ahead and say configure to further define our network. So this is going to be our first guest network. So generally something that's your internal LAN. So we're going to generally we'll put in something here like customer, again, say customer internal for their internal guest network, and you could further define that however you like, whatever makes sense in your environment here. But network offering, generally that default here, we do have the ability to do some load balancing with our networking here, as well as turning off that DHCP. We want to make sure that that's selected if we selected that option previously. Otherwise, generally leave that default. I'm going to select my gateway here. So generally, again, we might do something like 10.0.0.1 to define our guest local area network here, at least our first guest network. And we might do something again like a /24 in this case to define this network. And again, as long as it fits under that super CIDR, it doesn't necessarily matter as far as adaptive cloud is concerned. As long as it makes sense for your customer's environment, you don't want it to overlap and things like that. So the external ID is our API, so you have the ability to tag this network essentially. There is a full functioning API system on the back end of this that you could utilize if you are interested in that. You can definitely let us know for more information. Otherwise, again, there's a full API. You can spin things up, you can destroy it all through scripting and things like that. So if you're very good with that and PowerShell, a lot of resources there. So again, the API is what you'd be selecting there. The ACL here, it does also create, the virtual router creates an access control list. It creates two of them by default, the default allow and default deny. And that's essentially, again, some really, really basic firewalling rules. So to talk through a couple of things with this at this point, as far as these rules go, we can do a couple of things. One is this is some very, very basic rules that this is going to create. We'll talk through that a little bit more here, but the essential idea is, again, there's some basic firewalling rules that get created through this virtual router. But we do have the ability to do some other use cases. So if you have an instance where you want to work with specific hardware as far as security goes, we can co-locate a firewall in our data center and connect directly to that through this environment. We also can spin up our firewall as a service, which is essentially a fully managed advanced firewall that we manage. Again, we could spin that up in front of this environment and connect directly to it, which would then, afford us some additional access restrictions and things like that, as well as advanced security, which we'll talk through a little bit further as well. So I'm going to select the default allow at this point, hit OK. It's going to create my network here, and as you can see, it's virtually connected here to our router, to which then a few things are applied. We've kind of talked through some of this, but I'll kind of walk through a little bit again. as the router gets created, it goes to our block, grabs a public IP address that becomes our source net, to which we have some options. We have some very, very basic VPN capabilities from a user standpoint. It is very limited as far as that VPN capability goes. As far as being able to utilize that, you generally are limited to, say, like a Windows or Mac built-in VPN capabilities. If you want more advanced VPN capabilities, we definitely recommend, again, that firewall additionally on top of this here. But you do have those options if that is what you're looking for. Again, we have this source net. If you have a case to add additional servers or resources, things like that, you do have the ability to go ahead and acquire a new IP just by clicking the acquire new IP button. It's going to go to our block. It's going to grab a new IP from that, and additionally, be able to configure that here as well. So some other things to talk through. Again, the network ACL lists, it creates a couple by default. I do have the ability to create a new list here, to which I can apply some rules. And again, I'll show you those basic rules. You can configure this. It is a top level down here. So if I select, if I give it a rule number, it's going to apply those rules top down as you give that a number. We're going to select that a CIDR here again. That's going to be the IP that it's either going to come from or to. The action that we're going to select here, ports, protocols. You get the idea there, and then in and outbound traffic. You have that ability to go ahead and create that. And that does get applied at the guest network, which I will show you how that goes in just a second. Site-to-site VPN, that we do have the ability again to do a site-to-site VPN directly into this virtual router. Straight away, we can configure that as we go, and to kind of give you an idea of what something like that might look like. If I show you this, these are the basic rules that we need to be able to configure this guy. So you're probably used to seeing, most of this. We have all of the advanced encryptions and things like that you're looking for to be able to configure to connect to the other side. So just to give you an idea of what something like that might look like. So again, we have the ability to do a site-to-site directly into this virtual router through that public IP. I can also create a private gateway. This is a special private connection basically to our data center. So if you have a use case there, if you want to be able to, say you have backup as a service, or you have an appliance that your customer spent a lot of money on investment wise, they want to be able to co-locate that. We put that in our data center, and we have the ability to talk directly to that through a private gateway, so that it's not traversing over the internet to connect and talk to that for very, very low latency. So a couple other things to talk through. The guest network, again, this is where our virtual machines are applied, and then we have the ability to do one-to-one or static NATs, to which we can do, say, something like port forwarding. If you have a use case for a server or something like that that needs to have that one-to-one NAT, for example, an Exchange server that's in the environment, this is where we're going to go ahead and configure that. And also, again, that ACL gets applied at the guest network. So if I were to go ahead and select this, I would have the ability to go ahead and select my ACL here. And then within the guest network, again, I have the option to go ahead and I can remove that. I can reboot that if I have doing some troubleshooting. If I have a case for that, I have the ability to do that here as well. So that is the networking piece. So then once you have your networking done, the probably where you're going to spend the most of your time is creating instances or virtual machines. It's very quick, very easy to spin those up. And the way that we do that is by clicking instances here, add instance. And again, this is where we were talking about that zone and where that kind of comes into play. Additionally here, it does not matter, again, which data center you select. functionally. However, again, you want to make sure that you're consistent selecting the same one across the environment here for your client. So select that here. And then installing the operating system, we have a couple of options as well. And I'll talk through those. We have templates and we have ISOs. If I select ISO here to kind of talk through that quick, we have the ability to not only upload your own ISO to which you want to use, to boot into, to install an operating system, to do other functions, install software and those things. You can do that and upload your own. We additionally have we have several that are built in here for you, available immediately. We use these all of the time. The biggest use case here is the Acronis recovery media or the Veeam recovery media. When we're doing migrations and things like that, we'll put an agent, for example, on the machine, do a full bare metal backup, and then come in here, boot to this ISO, and then be able to restore our equipment, our virtual, into our virtual environment, whether it's a physical device or virtual. We have that ability to restore directly in here through that media. So again, templates, another option here. If I select next, again, we have some pre-built options in here for you to be able to select straight away. As far as templates go, you have the opportunity to upload or create your own templates as well through this for very quick installation. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and select Windows Server 2019, and then root disk size. By default, if I just hit next here, it's 50 gigs. I do have the ability to go ahead and define further that C drive, that root disk for us here as well. So I'm going to hit next here. Select our compute. We have quite a few options here. Generally, for demonstration purposes, I'll select 2 virtual CPUs and 8 gigs of RAM. Again, you have multiple options here additionally as well. And if you have a need for something outside of this list, let us know. We'll work with you on that. And then I'm going to hit next here. And then additionally, I could create an additional disk. I have the opportunity here. So if I want to create a data disk, say maybe a D drive, for example, in Windows here, I can do that here in this option. I can say custom, and I can basically, on this slider, I can go up to basically like say 3 terabytes, but I can enter in whatever size it is necessary in this box here additionally. And then that will get provisioned and made available to our operating system there. So next, affinity groups. We don't have anything configured there here. In this case, if you have a use case for an affinity group to be able to make sure that your machines are configured on separate hosts, those types of things, we can configure those as needed here. And networking here, this is what is going to tie in now our virtual machine to our network, which we just created as well. Additionally, I have the option to go ahead and define the IP address. So if I did want to just assign that IP here, I could do that, as our router is going to apply that through DHCP. So next here, SSH key pairs. If you're working with Linux servers, you have the ability to go ahead and select those here. We don't have any configured, so I'm going to go ahead and hit next. Give it a name, and something that would make sense again in that environment. And I'm going to say launch VM. And it's going to spin up very, very quickly here and basically allow us to be able to further configure our operating system within seconds. And honestly, a minute here, a couple minutes, we're going to be able to utilize this server. It's up and running now, but we can configure that within just a couple of minutes. To talk through these options, really self-explanatory, but just again, we could stop our instance. Maybe if you want to hard stop it for whatever reason, we can do that here. We can reboot it. Snapshots, we have the ability again to take snapshots here. And this is kind of a one-time snapshot. For example, say you're doing an upgrade, you want to go snapshot this thing, and if things for whatever reason don't go well, you can go ahead and revert back to the previous state by selecting these options here and snapshotting that machine. And then we can manage that, and I will show you that later here through this storage section. We can destroy this machine, just completely get rid of it in the environment. We can reinstall it directly from that base image. So we could, for whatever reason, we can reinstall directly back to that and have a fresh, clean installation here. We can attach or detach ISOs here as well. Here's our password for the root administration of this. If we set that, we can reset a password there. We can reset the key pairs if we need to here as well for Linux servers. And then we have the view console. And again, just in a few minutes as I've been talking here, we're actually up and operational. We're configuring Windows at this point. So we're spun up very, very quickly here. So that is adding our virtual machines in the environment. And then additionally, managing those virtual machines. We can look at the volumes that we have attached here. We can take snapshots. We can resize our volume if we want to resize our disk there and make that available to the operating system. We can look at our networking, we can add this thing to multiple networks if we need to be able to, for certain use cases, we can add additional NICs to this server through this as well, and specific stats if you're interested in that. We would manage also some of this through the storage, as I mentioned with the snapshots. We can add volumes here additionally to make available to our instances, or if you just have space up here that you want to additionally add to your environment, you can do that here as well. So say if you have some backups that you want to do, you can add that space here. And again, it's just consumption based, so whatever you use, you pay for there. So we could add that here if we wanted to. We're going to give it a name, apply it to a zone and a size, and then optionally we would have that option available in our instance to be able to add that space here as we would need. So that's your volumes there, so we can add storage and manage that. And then again, our snapshots. So this is our volume snapshots as well as our virtual machine snapshots that we would see here to be able to revert back to as necessary. So this is where you would manage that. And then additionally, the templates, this is where you can manage those. So if I wanted to add a template from, say, upload or something to that effect, I could do that here. And I can also create that from my storage as well, optionally here. So I would have that ability to create that from that location. Templates again, and ISOs, if I was to have a need to upload those and utilize those, this is where you're going to manage them. That's pretty much the Adaptive Cloud world. If you have any questions additionally, please reach out. My name is Eric Dingman with Adaptive Cloud. My email address is edingman@ippathways.com, and my phone number is 515-422-9333. Please reach out. Appreciate it. Thank you.